My source tonight is Republican Senator Bernie Moreno of Ohio. Was that exchange between Tucker and Ted Cruz getting texted around in a lot of Republican senator group chats today? I would imagine yes.
Probably could confirm that that's a yes.
I mean, what did you make of that? Because it is a real divide, though. Maybe not on, what the Bible says about Israel, but on regime change and striking Iran has been a pretty big divide that's coming out of the MAGA supporters.
Well, just to be clear, obviously I haven't had 2.5 hours to watch the entire interview, so watched a few clips.
It's quite something.
Right, it's been busy. But look, ultimately, the Republican Party is very united. The reality is President Trump ran in a campaign of peace and stability around the world, and that's what he's going to do. He certainly isn't somebody who wants to start an endless war. He's been very consistent his whole life that he doesn't believe that America should intervene in the foreign affairs of other governments. But it's a red line for President Trump to say, hey, look, a nuclear-powered Iran would be an existential threat, not just to Israel, but the entire Middle East order and to America, and we cannot allow them to have a nuclear weapon.
So are you personally comfortable with the U.S. striking Iran?
I'm personally comfortable that we have a commander-in-chief that knows that he needs to strike the right balance, that it's not about sucking us into another endless conflict, and that ultimately what he wants is peace and stability around the world, and an Iran that can be prosperous, part of the Western world, but cannot have a nuclear weapon.
But do you think a U.S. strike is needed to achieve that moment?
Look, I'm not privy to every single piece of intelligence. The good news is I have a commander-in-chief that we should all be rallying around to say, hey, look, he knows exactly what he needs to do. He's going to strike the right balance and have total faith in his abilities to make the right decision.
Well, I just wonder where you stand on this, because we're hearing from some of your colleagues, like Senator Josh Hawley, who said he spoke to the president last night and he said that he would not be comfortable if the United States took offensive action against Iran, a concern that you don't know where it goes next, essentially, is what he articulated.
Well, he's right about that. We do not want to escalate this conflict. President Trump's been clear about this. It's in the hands of Iran. If they can stop their enrichment capabilities and not have a nuclear weapon, we're going to have a peace and stable Middle East. And by the way, it's a lot to gain for Iran. They've been isolated from the Western world for a long time. So if they had their leaders want to advocate for their people and be part of the Western world, they can do that.
Do you believe that if there is a strike on Iran, that is there new intelligence that has showed why that would be justified now? I mean, obviously, it doesn't seem that their nuclear program has changed in the last 6 months or so. Why now is this the time?
Well, Secretary Rubio laid it out pretty well today. When you're a 90% nuclear power, you are in effect a nuclear power. And you can imagine how destabilizing it would be to have Iran have a nuclear weapon or enrichment capabilities. First of all, they don't even need it. Let's be honest about that. They're swimming in oil. They're swimming in natural gas. They don't need it to power their civilian uses. They're using it only to do what they said they're going to do, which is to wipe Israel off the face of the earth and then come after America next.
Yeah, and of course, I know the Senate is getting a briefing on Monday, I believe, on this. We'll see if you learn anything from there. Meanwhile, also on Capitol Hill, the Senate is working on passing the president's signature legislation right now, known as the Big Beautiful Bill, as it's being called by Republicans. Senator Josh Hawley said today that the president told him he was surprised by changes the Senate has made to this. This is what Senator Hawley had to say.
I walked through him and he said, oh, wow, that's very surprising. He said, I'm surprised that they made all these changes and, to the degree they did. I said, I am too. He was real clear to Senate Republicans just 2 weeks ago. Don't touch anything else on Medicaid. Take the House framework, tweak it if you need to, but do not do anything else. And this Senate framework is really, it departs from his framework big time.
Do you agree with Senator Hawley that it departs from what the president wanted to see here?
I haven't had a conversation with the president about it. What I do know is that we need to strengthen Medicaid and make sure we preserve it for the people who actually use it, not for able-bodied adults that are taking advantage of it, not to have some sort of state system that launders money to draw down more federal funds. These provider taxes is crystal clear. There's uniform consensus that these state provider taxes are a total fraud. So we've allowed it to happen for a long time. We have to be very careful. What I talk to my colleagues about is that every one of these decisions has a human being behind it, a family behind it, people that depend on these programs. And what we have to do is recognize that what the voters asked us to do on November 5th is put the interest of American citizens first and foremost.
Yeah, but what he's worried is that a lower provider tax rate, Senator Hawley says, will deplete resources for rural hospitals. Is that a concern you have with where the Senate bill is as it stands right now?
No, because there's other ways to help rural hospitals. We can have a targeted approach towards rural hospitals. We can make certain that, by the way, states who've abdicated the responsibility to share in the cost of Medicaid step up and do their part as well. As you know, these states use this money for other purposes. They're drawing down federal funds, but not all of it goes into healthcare. They use it for all kinds of other shenanigans.
But a lot of it goes into healthcare. I mean,
but not all of it. So we can take that money and direct it better. We also have to be more efficient, use technology, get illegals off of Medicaid. Some of these states are using it to cover illegal migrants' healthcare. That's something that would be categorically insane in any other country. The idea that we would take care of the health care of other citizens.
If you do that, does that achieve the billion? I mean, does that measure up to the billions of dollars more that potential Medicaid cuts that the Senate version of this bill is seeking? Because what Senator Hawley is saying is he's not articulating that. He's saying he's worried it's going to kick his constituents and they're not going to have any health insurance.
Well, we're not going to let that happen. But just to be crystal,
but how do you guarantee that? I guess
let's just be crystal clear about something really, really important. If you look at the budget that we have proposed, that hopefully we'll get across the finish line and get it signed by July 4th, we actually add $200 billion to Medicaid spending over the next 10 years. We spend more over the next 10 years on Medicaid with the current budget that we're proposing than what we spend today. So we're increasing the funding. We're taking illegals off. We're putting a path for able-bodied adults to enter the workforce, to be part of a productive labor force. By the way, it can be volunteering, taking care of relatives, et cetera.
What is I think there's questions about that, but in terms of what this ultimately looks like, Susie Wiles, the chief of staff, was on Capitol Hill today. There was reporting that she said that y'all should pass this next week. Is that true?
We need to, because
but did she say next week?
I don't know what exactly the words that came out of her mouth were, but what I'll say comes out of my mouth is that we should get this bill on the floor by the end of next week, pass it, whatever it takes. The Democrats can keep us there 24/7 if they want, until Saturday, Sunday, Monday. We got to get this bill to the House on Monday or Tuesday so they can vote on it, so that July 3rd, President Trump can sign it. Because look, here's what we're doing. We're making an historic investment in the nation's air traffic control system. We're adding a child tax credit to help middle-class Americans. We're providing these MAGA accounts, which is investing in children, American citizens. We're preventing a $4 trillion tax increase. We're funding our border, deportation, the military. We're getting rid of the debt ceiling conversation so that we're not facing the prospect of government shutdown. This bill does great things. I'm really proud of the work that the House and Senate's done. And look, it's not perfect because not everybody agrees on exactly what needs to be done, but it's a really, really great bill.
We'll see if it gets passed. Senator Moreno, thank you for your time here tonight.